Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror film from the UK, English language, released in the year 2016, directed by Liam Gavin, and this film is called A Dark Song. So A Dark Song is about this woman. She's been torn up by a tragedy in her past that resulted in the death of her young son. So since then she's been isolated, her friends are very worried about her, she's been to a mental facility, but she doesn't really have any reason for living, apart from trying to reconnect with her son to get some closure. So in order to do that, she's going to have to delve into black magic. So she hires out this house in the middle of nowhere that she's going to have guaranteed privacy for a year. So she gets the services of an occult expert. This occult expert happens to be an alcoholic, and so she's not really certain that he's going to be able to get the spirit of her son, but she's just desperate enough to try. So she gets him to come to the house. He looks around and he says that initially he can't help her because he doesn't believe she has her heart fully in it, but then she ends up convincing him with £80,000. So he tells her the next 6 months are going to be a grueling test, both mentally and physically, as they're going to try and use these rituals to get the spirits out there, but it's going to basically demand her full attention. She's not going to be able to leave the house for 6 months. She's not going to be able to contact with the outside world. So basically this is her universe. So as the two connect to each other and try to evoke these spirits, this is where things become complicated, because it turns out this woman has not been completely honest with the occult expert, which infuriates him. He says that unless she's honest, she's not going to be able to get the spirit out. So she ends up spilling her guts, so to speak, getting the truth out there, which really turns the ritual from being a quest to invoke a spirit to a quest of survival, because there are some dark entities that have now come into it that threatens to destroy her. So whether or not it does, or whether she can actually get connected with her son again, is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on A Dark Song. This is another movie that no one really talks about, so I'm really happy to be able to review these types of movies, because on one hand it's a film that you may not have heard of, so it maybe give you something new to watch, and it's another type of movie where it doesn't come with the influence of hype. And so coming into it, I was giving it every opportunity to impress me. I'm a massive fan of British horror. I thought the trailer looked great, and the fact that Steve Oram was in the film was another plus, as Steve Oram's a fantastic British actor. He was one of the main characters in Ben Wheatley's Sightseers, which is a fantastic film, and he's been in a whole host of other movies where he's just been really memorable. So to have his name connected to the film was one of the enticing qualities that made me want to go and watch it. And after watching the movie, I will say that this is an incredibly creepy experience. It's an experience that is forcing the viewer to use their head. And so if this is your type of thing, then I definitely think A Dark Song will appeal to you, because it's just incredibly unnerving. It's a movie that relies on two central performances that were absolutely brilliant. I thought Steve Oram as this alcoholic occult expert, and you've got Catherine Walker, who is this woman who's completely torn up. She had this traumatic past, and the level of desperation within two of these characters is that driving force. Is that on one hand you can say it's a paranormal film about black magic, on the other hand is this a case of a woman being so desperate that her mind is starting to play tricks on her. So there's a lot of ambiguity to the film. There's a lot of questions to this movie that are both answered to keep the movie evolving, and both unanswered to keep the level of mystery there. And I thought it was expertly paced, is because it never really ties up loose ends too quickly, and it prevents the movie from feeling as though there's any filler in the film. So the movie does rely on subtleties, and the subtleties are contributed to the performances. They're not overdone, and the subtleties through the camera work. It's a very dreary atmosphere. There's nothing beautiful about the film or extravagant, but what really got me was the score to this movie. The score was a character of its own, and it was absolutely phenomenal. I absolutely love the score to this film. In fact, it reminded me of another movie from Ben Wheatley called Kill List. Now, Kill List was an incredibly unnerving hitman type of movie, and the overall score was just absolutely mesmerizing. And I thought the score in this movie was very subtle, but it was extremely creepy, and you knew that something really bad was around the corner, but you didn't know exactly what. So it's a very unnerving, slow burn tension that finally gets to the end, and it just explodes into all out horror. And I thought that explosive horror set piece at the end of the film was a welcome reward for those who are patient enough to put up with slow burn tension. It's the Alfred Hitchcock sort of atmosphere that Liam Gavin manages to create in a very, very expert fashion. So the performance from Catherine Walker as this torn up individual was absolutely brilliant. I mean, it gives you enough information about these characters to really relate to them. It's a very powerful experience, because as I said, on one hand you can treat it as a paranormal film, on the other hand it's a character study of damaged people, and these damaged people are very sympathetic. Is that you've got this occult expert who is an alcoholic. Why is he an alcoholic? What's he running away from? And you've got this woman who is this torn up from the loss of her loved one, and this is something that affects a lot of people, and it's something that you can be very sympathetic for. And the beauty of the movie is it gives you details about these characters, but it doesn't give you every single detail. So So there's mystery not only behind the story, but also these characters, is that something is off. Even though they're very sympathetic, the desperation is leading them down paths where you're constantly asking, is there a hidden agenda? Is there a hidden agenda behind this occult expert? Is he actually using this woman's vulnerabilities to actually get a lot of money, or is he actually using it for a more personal reason? And then this woman, what's she experiencing? Is it a figment of her imagination, or is in fact the black magic working? And so the level of ambiguity to the film is the creepiness, is that you can draw your own conclusion as to what has happening in this movie. And the fact that these characters, you don't go into side plots about their upbringing, their history. As I said, there's enough information to connect with them, but there's also information that is deliberately pulled away to give you that ambiguity and give you that 3 dimension to the characters as it plays out. So for a film that has a very limited cast, I thought it was really, really well done. It needed a very good script. I thought the script's fantastic. It needed good performances, and the performances were absolutely through the roof. And the subtle sort of creepiness that the movie has, as I said, it's not spelling it out. It's basically leaving it up to your interpretation right up until the very satisfying end, which is everything that you want from a genuine sort of Alfred Hitchcock experience. And so the score, as I said, the score was phenomenal. It was by far the favourite part of this movie. It just creates a character of its own, an invisible monster that just creeps under you, and it's just incredibly unsettling. And so if you are a fan of scores that actually bring a lot more emphasis to a horror experience, then A Dark Song is definitely one of that. It's a very, very creepy film. The cinematography, I like the overall setting, because the setting symbolised not only them in the middle of nowhere, but also the isolation that both of these damaged characters were facing. They felt like they didn't fit into society, and I thought the isolation of this mansion in the middle of the countryside was symbolic of that. But at the same time, it's basically that little universe that's slowly engulfing these characters. You could feel the desperation, you could feel the sweat, you know, when they're being sick because of this ritual, and I could feel everything. So it's a movie you really experience, and that's what I loved. Another part of this movie that I absolutely loved. If I have one problem with the movie, right at the end, I thought it could have ended about 5 minutes earlier. It would have been a lot better, but it does go a little bit too far as basically not knowing when to cut it. And so that was the only minor criticism I had of what was an underrated gem. As I said, as far as psychological horror films are concerned, I thought this is absolutely fantastic, and it doubles as a character study of, as I said, damaged people. And so really interesting characters, really interesting story, prevents it from being boring, and makes it a film that I'm highly recommending. So overall, for A Dark Song, I'm going to give this one 4 stars. Go out there and see it. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.